Hello again, you sick, twisted weather freaks. Welcome to another fun filled, action packed, and intellectually stimulating edition of This Week in Weather. I'm your host and disappointed Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl fan, DT from Weather Risk here in Central Virginia. You're a captain of chaos, criminal confusion, your commander of catastrophe. Let's talk about this week in weather as of this Wednesday evening, February 15th. And the great Northeast U.S. snowless winter continues. Now, there talk of one last chance, maybe we'll see, end of February, beginning of March, maybe. I'm just really, it's just possibility. It's nothing to be too excited about yet. So we'll see. And there's a lot of reasons to be skeptical, disappointed. First, we'll start off with this slide here. Now, this here represents, this is the last four winters, but the last 3 years have been La Nina winters. And we can see how incredibly, this is actually the last 4 years, but like I said, the last three of them have been La Nina years. The winter of 2021, 21, 22, and 22, 23. And you can see how huge the snow deficit has been. Everybody east of the Rockies, except for maybe for northern Minnesota and the eastern Dakotas. I mean, it is way below normal. Look at it has been in the Northeast. There's a lot of snow removal people, snow plow people in the Northeast. At least they've had some snow in the last couple of winters in the Ohio Valley. Not great, but some. But in the mountains have been absolutely crushed. Look at these negative anomalies. Minus 70 inches of snow, but more below normal over the past four winters. I mean, you can see it. And then the bottom here, at the bottom, you look at the bottom of the image, you can see the snowfall departures. Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Maine, Vermont, just unbelievable anomalies here. Now, my point I wanted to bring up here is, La Nina and El Nino, those are called ENSO events, right? And we all know they're part of climate science. And we know that when you get a moderate or strong La Nina, your winters, big snows are going to be really reduced in the East Coast and not great in the other portions of the country either. And it's going to be really good in the West Coast and the Rockies. That's just what La Nina does. And unless something else is going on here, like you get a really strong blocking or or the MJO goes in a particular phase, that's what your winter is going to be. And the same thing with El Nino. Weak El Ninos are okay. Strong El Ninos really screw over the East Coast again. This is what climate science tells us. So if you know that ENSO events have seasonal impacts because climate science has proved it, and you know that's going to happen, this is the same climate scientist that's telling us the Earth is steadily warming. And it's warming because primarily driven, not completely, but the large part driven by human activity. So, if you're going to be skeptical about the Earth warming, and then you're going to look to find out whether you're going to have an El Nino or La Nina for the winter or for the hurricane season, you kind of have a bit of a flaw in your reasoning. I mean, it's the same climate science, folks, is what I'm trying to tell you here. So if you're going to get excited or wonder about what La Nina or El Nino is doing, you might want to realize that climate science kind of has an idea of what it's doing, and it's not all bullshit. So, I just wanted to point that out to you. All right. This here is this current winter. October 21 up to, today, February 15. There you go. Look at this. Snowfall anomalies for the winter. Unbelievable. Again, at least they've had some snow in the Ohio Valley and southern Iowa, but you can see the anomalies are unbelievable. Central and northern Virginia, again this winter, at least 6 to 12 inches below normal. And then once you get northern Virginia, the Shenandoah Valley, Pennsylvania, New England, Connecticut, eastern Ohio, you can see the dark brown colors there, 12 to 24, 24 to 36 inches below normal. And then, of course, in western Maryland, the snow belt and the eastern portions of West Virginia, even bigger, 38 to 48 inches, 36 to 48 inches below normal so far this winter. It's really been quite impressive. Now, in this case, the Dakotas and Nebraska and Minnesota, northern Iowa, they haven't done too badly. But so far, it's been a pretty... And again, look on the West Coast, look at the Rockies. Unbelievable amounts of snow in the mountains there. They really needed it. All right, here's our current pattern. A couple of days ago, this is October 13th. We can see the one trough here in the southwestern states. Here comes another one. There's your big Eastern Pacific Ridge, your Alaskan Ridge, Eastern Pacific Ridge. So these two troughs are going to merge. And when they merge, that's going to cause this ridge to become really big, and that's why we're having the warm conditions. Let me show you. This here is the this afternoon, 18Z GFS initialized. You can see one gargantuan low. Those two features met right here. A huge upper low in the southwest states. And of course, when this happens, we get a trough here, you get a ridge here. For every ridge, there's a trough. For every trough, there's a ridge. Just like this, like this, like this, the way it is. So here you go. Here's your trough, and there's your enormous ridge, and there your really amazingly warm temperatures. It's just, this, and we've had this all winter long, and we have to get this pattern to break, and so far it's not. You look at the temperatures from yesterday. This is February 14. You can see pretty warm across the southern states. Not that warm yet on the Ohio Valley, and fairly close to normal in the upper Midwest here. But then you can see the afternoon temperatures on this October 15th. Now here's your front. You can clearly see it. Very powerful cold front here. But look how warm it is from Texas all the way to Pennsylvania into Ohio, southern Illinois, and of course Virginia and the deep south. And then you can see the other side of the front quite cold. All right, let's talk about our teleconnections and see what that's showing here for the next week or so, next 2 weeks. Teleconnections, like we've talked about before, this is North America. We have two on the Atlantic side, the Atlantic Oscillation, the NAO. And then two on the Pacific side, the EPO and the PNA. So the EPO, when it is in the negative phase, that means you have a Siberian flow coming in from Alaska into North America. When it's in the positive phase, that means you have a low in Alaska and you're having Pacific air flood the North America and the Arctic air is cut off. The PNA, when it is positive, you have a big ridge bringing down Canadian air. When it's negative, you have a trough bringing storms into California and more Pacific air overrunning the country. On the Atlantic side, the Arctic Oscillation, when it's up in the North Pole, it keeps all the really Arctic air trapped up there. But when it comes south and it goes negative, or the polar vortex comes south, you get more cold air. And here's your NAO. When you're with the NAO is negative, you have a blocking over Greenland. That's better for East Coast winter storms. When it is positive, you get Midwest storms, and you get nothing on the East Coast. So what are we now? Of course, there are different combinations here, which I've mentioned before. On the Atlantic side, here's the AO and the NAO, and there's like 9 different possible combinations. And then on the EPO, the Pacific side, PNA, again, 9 different possible combinations. So we look at these to figure out what the pattern is going to be. So we look on the Atlantic side here. Here's the Arctic Oscillation and North American Oscillation. And as you can see, bring this front here a little bit. Here is the AO, and look, here we are right now, 15 September. Look at all the models here, all 6 of these models, all keep it positive until early March. That's not good if you want to see a late season winter surge. And it's not, it just isn't. And here is the NAO. It's slightly positive, and it kind of goes neutral around the last week of February going to early March. Well, that's okay. It's not great, but it's better than being positive. Now let's look at the Pacific side. Here's the Pacific side of things, and you can see again, let me bring this front. Here's the PNA, the West Coast ridge or trough. There's the black line. There we are right now. You see how it's negative, trending negative? Now look at the projections here. All of these values are strongly, strongly negative through February 25, and then moderately negative all the way to the beginning of March. And then the Eastern Pacific Oscillation. Now here it's positive, which is bad if you want cold weather. You want this negative. And it does go negative around February 25, but only for a very short period of time, and then it bounces back towards neutral by the end of the month. Longer term, there are some experimental data here. Here is the EPS the next 46 days. You can see this here. And here's the Arctic Oscillation. Notice how amazingly positive it is February 16th to March 1st. Look how unbelievably red and yellow the colors are. Very positive values, right? Now, after the first week of March, we kind of get some negatives in here a little bit. You can see some of these light greens, darker greens in the areas. Not a lot. It's not overwhelming consensus yet, but there does seem to be a trend towards negative in March here. So maybe that might mean something later on in March. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's not enough. Here is the NAO. Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit so you can see it a little more. There you go. And again, the NAO. Oops. There we go. Front. There's the NAO right there. You can see it's generally positive right here. Slightly positive right now through the end of February. Then after March 6th or 7th, there is a clear negative trend here and these greens showing up. So it kind of means the NAO is going negative in March. Okay, that would be good. That's not bad. That would be okay. The problem is the PNA. Let me show you what I mean here. Now this is the PNA. Let me blow this up a little bit. Again, this is your West Coast ridge or trough, right? Your West Coast ridge or trough. So for example, right now, when you have a trough like this is a negative PNA. You see that? When you have this is a negative P&A. It's bringing in Pacific energy, not Arctic air. All the cold air is going down into California and the Rockies and Washington State and British Columbia, and you have mild on the East Coast. That's a negative P&A. So long term here, what we see is unbelievably negative values now through March 6th. Look at these dark blues and greens, dark greens and blues here. Look how negative. Now after March 10th, it's still kind of negative. There's some yellow patches in here, but there's a lot of negative in here. So maybe the P&A might not be as negative as we go into the early mid-March, but that's not what you want. That's not great. So the teleconnections are not great. There's a little bit of hope on the Atlantic side, a little bit. Okay, let's talk about our MJO, see what's going on here. All right, right now we're in phase 6. You can see it. There we are, right? And you can see we've moved to 3, 3, 4, 5, and now in phase 6. What does that mean? Well, this is phase 6 with neutral conditions in February. Okay, February neutral conditions, because I believe the La Nina is now over. So you can see here it's very close to being over. And look at the pattern here for February 6th. Ridge, big West Coast trough, the dropping in, and ridge over the eastern United States. That's what it looks like. Now remember, this was the pattern. That's what it is today. See how remember this was yesterday. You see how these two features dropped in? Okay, and you got your ridge forming? That's that. It's the exact same pattern. I mean, this MJO stuff, when the MJO is strong like this, when it's really far out here, remember, this is weak, this is very strong, so when it's out here moderately strong like that, it really does drive the pattern. And you can see it. And there's our big ridge on the West Coast where it's nice and toasty. And you can see the trough here. There's your cold front where your temperatures are, right here. That's pretty amazing stuff, isn't it? I think it is. Okay. Now, what happens? Well, let's go on. Let's take a look at our models here for the next 7 days. So what happens is there's our big upper level low. It ejects piece of energy coming east and the ridge. And this trough comes here on Friday. So this is Thursday. The trough will get here on Friday with a lot of rain. And you can see a lot of rain on the East Coast here with this cold front. And you can see it very nicely here. This is, let's see here. This is the front going through on tomorrow on Thursday, and very warm east of the front, all the way from southern New England all the way down to Georgia. 70s in the sunshine, 50s and 60s in the cloud cover, and then moderate snow in the Midwest here into the Great Lakes. The cold front blows through Friday morning on the East Coast. A lot of rain, maybe some thunderstorms south of the Pennsylvania-Maryland border down to Georgia, because the temperatures are going to be holding steady Thursday night into Friday morning. So it's going to storm, and there's going to be some thunderstorms in here. So our first big thunderstorm of the season possible in the southeastern states here. Okay. Now we go beyond this, and we see what happens with the MJO. All right. So here we have 3 different models. We have the European, then we have the GFS, and then we have the Japanese on the bottom here. So let me bring this arrow up. Here we go, and you can see it. Now what happens here is these models all want to take the MJO into phase 8. See that? They take it into phase 7 and then phase 8. Then they curl it into neutral circle. Here's a Japanese model. Takes it to phase 7 and phase 8 and actually wants to bring it to phase 1. And then the GFS model takes it to phase 7 and phase 8 and then turns it neutral circle. So again, phase 8 is great. Now phase 7 is not. This is phase 7. All right? Now, phase 7, you have a big trough here in the eastern Pacific from Alaska, a nice flat ridge covering most of the country east of the Rockies. So it's a fairly dry and pretty kind of a mild pattern. So the problem here, and we can see this on what happens with the jet stream. So we get this little surge of cold air that comes in here. Let me bring front. There we go. It comes into the trough. This is coming out of the weekend. This is next Monday, the 20th, I believe that is, yeah. And you can see there's another closed low, another trough in the southwestern states. The vortex has come a little far south, and we have a nice big broad trough here trying to drive some cold air southward. But again, what happens is this feature and this big energy coming down the ridge, they end up becoming another monster trough in the western United States. Can you believe this? And as a result, you get another ridge on the East Coast, and we start warming up again. So, I mean, it's cold for the Midwest. They get cold with the plains and maybe some rain or snow in the lower plains, but on the East Coast, nothing. Nothing. It's really quite remarkable. Now, what's going to happen is let me blow this map up a little bit so you can see it. This trough is going to drive slowly eastward, pushing against the ridge and will knock it down. But the front and the waves are low pressure. This is going to be a low pressure traveling up the front, and it's going to produce a lot of rain and storms along the front and south of the front, and then heavy rain and snow along to the north of the front. Let me show you what I mean here. This is now February 21st, 22nd in the upper left, and then into the 22nd. You can see the front right here, a lot of rain, quite warm, and then significant snow in the Midwest, into the Ohio Valley, Michigan, and possibly into New York and central and northern New England here. And then a lot of rain in Pennsylvania, Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee. And as this front comes southward, the rain will reach the southeastern states late on the 22nd and the 23rd. So this is a pretty potent looking system here. A lot of very big temperature contrast along this front and boundary like that. Now, beyond that, what happens is here's the MJO. Now, we talked about how the models were taken to phase 8. Now, this is great because if we go into phase 8, we get this in February. Now, this is the snowstorm signal. We've seen this a couple times this winter, and every time the MJO showed this, it's fallen apart. Every time. So, this is why we keep getting these false signals. And, I got caught once in December thinking the December blizzard in the Ohio Valley and Buffalo was going to be up towards the East Coast before Christmas. That was wrong. I got fooled that time, but I haven't been fooled since. And you can see what the pattern looks like. Huge blocking in northern Canada, Greenland, monster negative anomaly on the East Coast, low pressure. This is the snowstorm map in February. This is what you want to see. Okay, so this is great if this happens, if this happens. Okay, and you can see when it happens the last week of February, after February 20th. 22nd, 25, 26, something like that. The problem is some of the models are beginning to change already. I don't believe it, but it's true. Here's the European bias corrected BC. Here's the GFS. Look what it's doing. It doesn't go into phase 8. As soon as it gets into phase 7, it goes and crashes right into the neutral circle. Again it doesn't. It will not go into phase 8. Part of that is because of the damn La Nina. Here's the GFS. It goes into phase 8 briefly, then back into the neutral circle. It's hard to believe. We cannot get this thing to stay and go into phase 8. And it's just killing the freaking winter. Just killing it. Unbelievable. And then we go, so, okay, what are the maps showing? Well, we know what's going to happen if we get to phase 8, but what is the data showing? Well, here we have February 24 and and into March 1st. So what happens is we can see another very, very strong anomaly. There we go. Let's see if I can bring it here. Here we go. A very strong a negative anomaly Pacific Northwest. You can see it right there in the West Coast, the Rockies, and so forth. And then look at the huge ridge forming again over the southeastern states, into the Ohio Valley, into the Mid-Atlantic, affecting New England and the Great Lakes. Now, eventually, the vortex here does come south and it flattens the ridge for the time being. But we still have a negative anomaly on the West Coast. We need to get this anomaly out of here, and it simply won't leave because of the strong ridging here in the Pacific. This is connected to the ocean water temperatures in the Pacific Ocean right now. A lot of very, very warm water in the Central Pacific, and here, and that's keeping that ridge. And the ridge here and in this area means a trough on the West Coast. That it just does. That's why the pattern gets screwed all the time, that and La Nina. Now, if we get the pattern to actually flatten out like this, there's going to be some energy coming along here, along the boundary, which could bring snow into the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, or New England. And we can see this in some of the extended models. Here's the GFS. This is the 18Z. It has the low moving through Virginia. You get some snow in Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Ohio, maybe some Maryland. And then the European, from the extended European here, has this as well. And now this is February 27th, 28th. Here's the low. It's along the Arctic boundary. You can see the zero isotherm is along the North Carolina-Virginia border. Most of this is snow in northern and central Virginia, the Shenandoah Valley, Ohio, northern West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania. Obviously, it'd go into the rest of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, maybe to New York City. Again, this is very far out there, and this only works if the pattern gets suppressed like this. It's got to be suppressed like that. So this is real speculation. There's no reason to get excited about it. It's the odds are it's not going to happen, but I just wanted to point out to you. Now, what this does do, it does end the warm pattern. Here is the European week 2. You can see the temperatures finally back to normal in the Mid-Atlantic and the Ohio Valley, a couple degrees below normal in New England and the Great Lakes, and only a couple degrees above normal across the Gulf Coast. The bottom right, that's the GFS, same general idea. This takes us, into the very end of February, beginning of March. One other point here we talked about is the sudden stratospheric warming, the buildup of warm air in the Arctic region, which causes the polar vortex to weaken and split apart into 2 or 3 pieces. Now, last week we talked about this. The models were showing this. This is February 6th, valid February 14, which is February 2021. So the models were showing there's your high pressure ridge at the very top of the atmosphere. This is at 10 millibars, almost on the edge of outer space. And what happens is the vortex is split. You see one piece here, blocking in here. This is great. It shows the cold air being forced southward and so on and so forth. But here's the updated one, and this is not good. Bring it front. You can see it here. Here's the updated one. Now this is February 15th. 6 days, 144 hours. This is February 21, and we're not seeing a split. Now the vortex is being displaced, but we're not seeing a split. This and these do not match. This is telling me that the vortex splitting idea is looking weaker and weaker. Even now, there's a lot of warm air building up in the Arctic region, but again, that helps displace things, but that's not causing the vortex to split, and that's the key point here. And we can see that also with the winds. This is from last week. The models were showing the big drop off in the winds as we got to February 20th. Very, very weak winds here, actually reversal westerly winds, and then it stays very weak all the way through the end of March. The same data is showing the same thing. It's doing the same sort of thing. Very weak winds here. Again, indicative of the vortex moving and trying to split or getting displaced, but I'm not sure if it's going to do that. So, if that were to happen, that would be great. It would really help the last week of February and March. It would increase the chances of the Arctic oscillation going strongly negative. And right now, the data shows that's not going to happen. So, I'm skeptical, and you should be too, given what the winter is. There are some possibilities, like I said, in late February and March, maybe for something. And that would be a real boon to these snow removal guys. These guys are getting killed, folks. I mean, just very tough winter. So I'm hoping for something in late February, March, just to help those guys out. And you should, I guess, if you're praying for that sort of stuff, you should be thinking about them, because they're really getting hurt by this horrible, non-existent winter. Really, just look at this, just unbelievable. Anyway, this is meteorologist DT from Weather Risk. I'll see you over on the Twitter page, over on the website, and the Facebook page.